Hello, I'm Jessica, I'm 30 years old, and what I've been through recently has truly devastated me deeply. While listening to my story, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. 3 days after my mother died, my phone rang. It was my lawyer calling me. I was still in shock, still couldn't believe that my mother was really gone. The funeral had been a blur of tears, condolences, and people I barely recognized telling me how sorry they were for my loss. "Jessica," said Mr. Thompson, my mother's attorney, his voice gentle but professional. "I know this is a difficult time, but we need to discuss your mother's will. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" I had barely been sleeping or eating since the funeral. The thought of dealing with legal matters felt overwhelming, but I knew it had to be done. My mother had been very organized about everything in her life, so I wasn't surprised she had left detailed instructions for after her death. "Of course," I managed to say, my voice hoarse from crying. "What time should I be there?" 10 o'clock would be perfect. "Jessica, I want you to know that your mother spoke about you often. She loved you very much." Those words made my eyes fill with tears again. My mother and I had been incredibly close, especially after my father left us when I was 12. She had raised me as a single mother, working double shifts as a nurse to make sure I had everything I needed. She never remarried, never even dated seriously. She always said I was enough for her, that we were a perfect team of two. The next morning, I drove to Mr. Thompson's office in downtown Portland. It was a crisp October day, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. My mother had always loved autumn. She would have been taking pictures of the trees right now, adding them to her collection of nature photographs that covered our refrigerator. Mr. Thompson's office was in an old brick building that smelled like coffee and old books. His secretary, a kind-looking woman in her 60s, offered me tea and spoke in hushed, sympathetic tones. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life happen. When Mr. Thompson called me into his office, I was surprised to see how serious his expression was. He was usually a cheerful man who had handled my mother's affairs for years, but today he looked almost worried. "Please, sit down, Jessica," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his massive wooden desk. "I need to discuss something very important with you." I sat down, clutching my purse in my lap. "Is everything okay? Was there a problem with the will?" Mr. Thompson opened a thick folder and pulled out several documents. "Jessica, your mother was a very complex woman. She loved you deeply, but she also carried some heavy burdens that I don't think you were aware of." My heart started beating faster. What was he talking about? My mother had been the most straightforward person I knew. She didn't keep secrets, didn't play games. She was honest almost to a fault. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "What kind of burdens?" "Before we get to that, I need to tell you about your inheritance." He looked down at the papers in front of him. "Jessica, your mother has left you $5 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually gasped out loud and gripped the arms of my chair. That's impossible," I stammered. My mother was a nurse. She lived in a modest house, drove an old car. She couldn't afford to take vacations. Where would she get $5 million? Mr. Thompson nodded as if he had expected this reaction. "Your mother was very good at keeping secrets, Jessica. She inherited a substantial amount from your grandfather when he died 15 years ago. Instead of spending it, she invested it very wisely. She lived modestly by choice, not necessity." I felt dizzy. My grandfather had been a quiet man who worked in construction. I had no idea he had any significant money. And my mother, she had let me struggle through college, taking out student loans, working part-time jobs, when she could have helped me easily. But why didn't she tell me? Why did she let me struggle when she could have helped? She wanted you to be independent, to learn the value of hard work. She was very proud of how you turned out, Jessica. She believed that giving you everything would have made you soft. I was still reeling from the shock. $5 million. It was more money than I had ever dreamed of having. I could pay off my student loans, buy a house, travel the world, quit my stressful job at the marketing firm where I worked 60 hours a week for barely enough to cover my rent and expenses. "There's something else," Mr. Thompson said, and his tone made my stomach drop. "Your mother included a condition with the inheritance." "What kind of condition?" He pulled out another document, this one handwritten in my mother's familiar neat script. "She left you a letter explaining everything. But the condition is this: in order to receive the $5 million, you must completely change your identity. You must legally change your name, move to a different state where no one knows you, and never contact anyone from your current life again. No friends, no co-workers, no relatives. You must essentially become a completely different person." I stared at him in disbelief. That's insane. Why would she ask me to do that? "Read the letter, Jessica. It explains everything." With trembling hands, I took the letter from him. It was several pages long, written in my mother's careful handwriting. I could almost hear her voice as I read, "My dearest Jessica, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am so sorry that I couldn't explain this to you while I was alive. I was a coward, and I thought I could take these secrets to my grave. But recent events have made me realize that your safety depends on you knowing the truth. Your father didn't leave us when you were 12 because he fell out of love with me. He left because he had to. Jessica, your father was not the man I told you he was. His real name wasn't David Miller. It was David Constantin, and he was involved with some very dangerous people. When I met your father, I thought he was just a charming businessman who traveled a lot. I was young and naive, and I fell in love with his mysterious nature. It wasn't until after we were married and I was pregnant with you that I learned the truth about what he really did for a living. Jessica, your father was part of an organization that, I can't even write the words. They hurt people. They took money from people who couldn't afford to lose it. They made people disappear. When I found out, I threatened to leave him and take you away. That's when he told me that leaving wasn't an option. Once you were in that life, you were in it forever. But your father loved us, Jessica. In his own twisted way, he really did love us. So he made a deal with his associates. He would fake his own death and disappear, and in exchange, they would leave us alone. We would be free, but only if we never tried to find him or contact him. For 18 years, this arrangement worked. We lived quietly, and no one bothered us. But 6 months ago, everything changed. I started getting phone calls. People asking about David, asking about you. Someone leaked information about where we were, and now they know about you. Jessica, these people don't forget, and they don't forgive. They believe that the sins of the father pass to the children. They think that you might know something about your father's business, or that you might be useful to them in some way. I've been trying to handle this situation quietly, but I'm getting old, and I'm scared. The money I'm leaving you isn't just an inheritance. It's meant to give you a chance to disappear, to start over somewhere safe where they can't find you. If you take this money and follow my instructions, you can live a comfortable life somewhere far away from here. You can be anyone you want to be. But if you stay, if you remain Jessica Miller in Portland, Oregon, I'm afraid they will eventually come for you. I know this seems extreme, and I know it's not fair. You didn't choose this life, and you certainly didn't choose to have a criminal for a father. But sometimes life doesn't give us choices. It only gives us consequences for choices other people made. Please, My darling girl, take the money and run. Don't try to investigate your father's past or find out more about these people. Just disappear and be safe. That's all I've ever wanted for you, to be safe and happy. I love you more than you will ever know. Mom, by the time I finished reading the letter, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. My entire life felt like a lie. My father wasn't the traveling salesman who had abandoned us. He was a criminal who had faked his death to protect us. And now, according to my mother, dangerous people were looking for me. This can't be real, I whispered. This sounds like something out of a movie. Mr. Thompson's expression was grave. I'm afraid it's very real, Jessica. Your mother came to me 6 months ago, very frightened. She updated her will and made these arrangements because she was genuinely afraid for your safety. But who are these people? What do they want with me? I don't know the details, and frankly, I don't want to know. What I do know is that your mother was not a paranoid woman. If she was scared enough to set up this arrangement, then the threat was real. I felt like the room was spinning. $5 million to disappear forever. To give up my friends, my job, my entire identity. To never see anyone I cared about again. What if I don't take the money? I asked. What if I just stay here and live my normal life? Then the money goes to charity, as specified in the will. And you, well, you take your chances with whatever your mother was trying to protect you from. I thought about my life in Portland. I had a few close friends, a job I didn't love but was good at, a small apartment that felt like home. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was mine. The idea of giving all of that up, of becoming someone else entirely, felt impossible. But then I thought about my mother's letter, about the fear in her words. She had lived with this secret for 18 years, carrying the burden of protecting me without ever telling me why. If she was scared enough to ask me to disappear, maybe I should listen. How long do I have to decide? I asked. Legally, you have 30 days to accept or decline the inheritance. But Jessica. He leaned forward in his chair. If your mother was right about the danger, waiting 30 days might not be wise. I stood up abruptly, feeling claustrophobic in the small office. I need some time to think. This is too much. Of course. But Jessica, please be careful. Don't discuss this with anyone. Your mother was very specific about that. The fewer people who know about this situation, the safer you'll be. I nodded numbly and walked out of his office in a daze. Outside, the autumn air felt sharp against my face, but I barely noticed. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just trying to process what I had learned. My phone buzzed with a text message from my best friend Sarah. Hey girl, want to grab dinner tonight? I feel like we haven't talked in forever. I stared at the message, thinking about what it would mean to accept my mother's offer. I would never see Sarah again. I would never text her back or hear her laugh or complain about her terrible dating life. I would just disappear from her world, and she would never know why. The thought made me start crying again. How could my mother ask me to give up everything I cared about? How could she expect me to just walk away from my entire life? But then I remembered something from the letter. Sometimes life doesn't give us choices, it only gives us consequences for choices other people made. I drove home slowly, taking the long way through the city. I looked at all the familiar places, the coffee shop where I went every morning, the bookstore where I spent hours browsing on weekends, the park where my mother used to take me to feed the ducks when I was little. All of it felt precious suddenly, like I was already saying goodbye. My apartment felt different when I walked in. Everything looked the same, my books on the shelves, my plants on the windowsill, my mother's quilt draped over the back of the couch. but it all felt temporary now, like I was staying in a hotel room rather than my own home. I made myself a cup of tea and sat down at my kitchen table with my mother's letter, reading it again more carefully. There were details I had missed the first time, small clues about the kind of people my father had been involved with. Words like organization and associates that suggested something more sophisticated than just petty criminals. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. If my father had faked his death 18 years ago, where was he now? Was he still alive? Did he know that people were looking for me? And most importantly, how did these people find out about me after all these years? I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice it was getting dark outside until my phone rang, startling me. The caller ID showed an unknown number. "Hello." I answered cautiously. There was a pause, then a man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. "Jessica Miller." My blood went cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who knew your father. We need to talk." I hung up immediately, my heart pounding. The phone rang again almost instantly. Same unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but it started ringing again right away. With shaking hands, I turned off my phone and unplugged the landline. I sat in my dark apartment, too afraid to turn on the lights, wondering if this was what my mother had been trying to protect me from. The calls had started already. Somehow, these people knew that my mother was dead, knew that I would be learning about my father's past. They were moving fast, not giving me time to process or plan. I thought about Mr. Thompson's words. If your mother was right about the danger, waiting 30 days might not be wise. Maybe he was right. Maybe I didn't have the luxury of time to make this decision carefully. Maybe the choice was being made for me right now, with every unanswered phone call from unknown numbers. I spent that night awake, sitting in my chair by the window, watching the street below for any signs of unusual activity. Every car that drove by slowly, every person who walked past and glanced up at my building, made my heart race. By morning, I had made my decision. I was going to take the money and disappear, just like my mother wanted. Not because I wanted to, but because staying was starting to feel like suicide. But first, there were things I needed to know. If I was going to give up my entire life, I at least deserved to understand why. But first, there were things I needed to know. If I was going to give up my entire life, I at least deserved to understand why. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to my mother's house. She had lived in the same small craftsman-style home for 20 years, and being there without her felt surreal. Everything was exactly as she had left it, her coffee cup still in the sink, her reading glasses on the side table next to her favorite chair, yesterday's newspaper folded to the crossword puzzle she never got to finish. I started searching through her things, looking for any clues about my father or the people who were supposedly after me. My mother had been organized to the point of obsession, keeping files for everything: tax returns, medical records, insurance policies. But I found nothing about my father beyond the few photos she had shown me over the years. Then I remembered something. When I was a teenager, I had found my mother crying in the basement one day. She was holding a showbox, but when she saw me, she quickly put it away and wiped her tears. She said she was just feeling nostalgic, but I had always wondered what was in that box. I went down to the basement and started searching. Behind the water heater, hidden behind some old paint cans, I found it. The same showbox I had seen her with years ago. Inside were things I had never seen before. Photos of my father that were different from the ones upstairs. In these pictures, he looked serious, almost dangerous. There were newspaper clippings about various crimes, though I couldn't immediately see how they connected to my father. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, was a cell phone. It was an old flip phone, the kind people used 15 years ago. I turned it on, surprised that it still had battery. There was only one number in the contacts, saved under the name emergency only. My hands were trembling as I stared at the phone. This had to be a way to contact my father. My mother had kept it all these years, hidden away like a secret weapon she hoped she would never have to use. I thought about everything I had learned, about the choice I was facing. Before I disappeared forever, didn't I have the right to talk to the man whose actions had forced this decision on me? Before I could change my mind, I pressed call. The phone rang 3 times before a man answered. His voice was familiar, though I hadn't heard it in 18 years. "Sarah," he said, using my mother's name. "Is that you? Are you okay?" "Dad." My voice came out as barely a whisper. There was a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer but filled with something that sounded like pain. "Jessica. Oh God, Jessica. You shouldn't be calling this number. Where's your mother?" "She's dead, Dad. She died 4 days ago." Another silence, longer this time. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel his shock through the phone. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I loved her so much. I never stopped loving her." "Then why did you leave us?" The words came out harsher than I intended, carrying 18 years of hurt and confusion. "Because staying would have gotten you both killed. Jessica, you have to listen to me very carefully. If you're calling this number, it means something has gone wrong. Are you safe right now?" I thought about the phone calls from yesterday, the unknown number that kept calling. "I don't think so. Someone called me yesterday, said they knew you." "Damn it." I could hear him moving around, urgent sounds in the background. "Where are you right now?" "I'm at Mom's house." "You need to leave there immediately. Don't go back to your apartment, don't go to work. These people, Jessica, they're not going to just want to talk to you." "What people?" "Mom left me a letter, but she didn't tell me everything." "Who are you really? What did you do?" "I worked for a man named Viktor Kozlov. Money laundering, mostly, but other things too. When I met your mother, I thought I could have both lives, the work and the family. I was wrong." I had heard the name Viktor Kozlov before, seen it in news reports about organized crime. My father hadn't just been involved with dangerous people. He had been involved with some of the most dangerous people in the country. "Viktor is dead now," my father continued, "but his son Anton runs things. Anton doesn't believe in the old agreements his father made. He thinks the sins of the father should pass to the children. He's been looking for me for years, and now he's found out about you." "What does he want?" "Information about where I am, about money I supposedly hid before I disappeared. But Jessica, even if you knew these things, giving him what he wants wouldn't be enough. Once Anton has you, he won't let you go. You know too much just by being my daughter." I sank down onto my mother's basement floor, overwhelmed by the impossibility of the situation. I was being hunted by criminals because of crimes my father had committed before I was even born. "Mom left me money," I said. $5 million. "But only if I change my identity and disappear." "Smart woman. Take it, Jessica. Take the money and run as far as you can. But that means never seeing anyone I care about again. Never having a normal life." "You can have a life, sweetheart. It might not be the life you planned, but you can be happy somewhere else, as someone else. The alternative is..." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. "Where are you now?" I asked. "It's better if you don't know. But Jessica, I want you to know that not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you and your mother. Leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was the only way to keep you safe." I was crying now, 18 years of missing him hitting me all at once. I needed you, Dad. There were so many times I needed you. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. But you're strong, just like your mother. You're going to get through this. Suddenly, I heard a sound upstairs, the front door opening. My blood went cold. Someone's in the house, I whispered into the phone. Get out of there now, my father said urgently. Is there a back way out of the basement? There was a small window that led to the backyard, but I would have to climb up to reach it. I could hear footsteps upstairs, slow and deliberate, like someone was searching the house room by room. Jessica, listen to me. My father's voice was calm but urgent. You're going to get out of there, and then you're going to take your mother's offer. Change your name, take the money, and disappear. Can you do that for me? I was climbing toward the window now, trying to be as quiet as possible. What about you? Will I ever see you again? I don't know, sweetheart. But knowing that you're alive and safe somewhere will be enough for me. The footsteps were getting closer to the basement door. I pushed the window open and started climbing through. I have to go, I whispered. I love you, Jessica. I'm proud of the woman you've become. Now go, and don't look back. I dropped the phone and squeezed through the window, falling into the bushes in my mother's backyard. I could hear voices in the house now, at least 2 men, speaking in low tones. I crawled through the bushes to the back fence and climbed over into the neighbor's yard. My car was parked in front of the house, but I couldn't get to it without being seen. Instead, I ran through the neighborhood, taking a winding route back toward the main street where I could catch a bus. As I sat on the bus 20 minutes later, trying to look normal while my heart pounded, I realized that my decision had been made for me. Those men in my mother's house weren't there to talk. They were there to take me, and probably to hurt me in the process. My mother had been right. My father had been right. There was no safe way to stay and fight this. My only option was to disappear. But first, I had to go back to my apartment to get a few essential things: my passport, some clothes, the small amount of money I had saved. I knew it was risky, but I couldn't start a new life with nothing. I got off the bus 6 blocks from my building and walked carefully, staying alert for anything unusual. Everything seemed normal: the same homeless guy sitting outside the convenience store, the same teenagers hanging out by the bus stop, the same elderly woman walking her tiny dog. But when I turned the corner to my street, I saw them. 2 men in dark suits sitting in a black sedan parked across from my building. They were trying to look casual, but they were clearly watching my apartment. I ducked back behind the corner and pulled out my phone. I called Mr. Thompson's office. I need to accept the inheritance, I said when he answered. Today. Right now. Jessica, are you all right? You sound upset. I can't explain over the phone, but I need to accept my mother's conditions and get access to that money as quickly as possible. That's unusual, but not impossible. Can you come to my office in 2 hours? I'll need you to sign some papers and make arrangements for the identity change. I'll be there. I hung up and looked around, trying to figure out how to get to his office without being followed. The men in the car hadn't seen me yet, but if I walked past them to get to the main street, they would notice me for sure. There was an alley that ran behind my building. If I could get to it without being seen, I could get to my apartment through the back entrance and grab what I needed quickly. I circled around the block, staying out of sight, until I reached the alley. My building had a back entrance that led to the basement laundry room. From there, I could take the stairs to my floor without going through the main lobby. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the back door. The basement was dark and smelled like detergent and old concrete. I climbed the stairs slowly, listening for any sounds that didn't belong. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. I opened the stairwell door cautiously and looked down the hallway. Everything seemed normal. I walked quickly to my door and let myself in. Everything in my apartment looked exactly as I had left it, but somehow it felt different. Like someone had been there, looking through my things. I couldn't prove it, but I trusted my instincts. I grabbed my passport from the drawer where I kept important documents. I threw some clothes into a backpack, along with a few photos and some jewelry that had belonged to my grandmother. I took the cash I kept hidden in a coffee can, about $800. As I was about to leave, I stopped and looked around my apartment one more time. This had been my home for 3 years. I had painted these walls, chosen this furniture, made this space mine. And now I was walking away from it forever. I thought about all the things I was leaving behind. Not just possessions, but relationships, memories, the life I had built. My job, where my co-workers were probably wondering why I hadn't shown up. My friends, who would never know what happened to me. My favorite coffee shop, where the barista knew my order by heart. But then I thought about the men sitting outside my building, waiting for me. I thought about my father's voice on the phone, the fear in it when he told me to run. I thought about my mother, who had carried this burden for 18 years to keep me safe. I left my apartment and made my way back down to the basement. But as I reached for the back door, I heard footsteps in the stairwell above me. Heavy footsteps, moving fast. They had found me. I ran out the back door and into the alley, not caring about being quiet anymore. Behind me, I could hear shouting, doors slamming. They were following me. I ran toward the main street, my backpack bouncing against my shoulders. I could hear them behind me, getting closer. When I reached the street, I saw a taxi and flagged it down desperately. Downtown. I gasped as I threw myself into the back seat. The Lawyer District. And please hurry. As the taxi pulled away, I looked back and saw 2 men emerge from the alley. One of them was talking on a phone, probably calling for backup or reporting that I had gotten away. I slumped back in the seat, breathing hard. I had escaped, but barely. And now they knew for sure that I was aware of them, that I was running. The chase had officially begun. "You okay, miss?" the taxi driver asked, looking at me in the rearview mirror. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just running late for an important appointment." But I wasn't fine. I was terrified, confused, and about to give up everything I had ever known. In 2 hours, I would sign papers that would legally erase Jessica Miller from existence. I would become someone else, someone with no past and no connections to the life I was leaving behind. As the taxi drove through the city streets, I watched Portland pass by outside the window. The coffee shops and bookstores, the parks and bridges, all the places that had been part of my daily life. I was saying goodbye to all of it, and most of the people I cared about would never know why I had disappeared. But I was alive. And if my mother and father were right, staying alive meant becoming someone else entirely. The question now was, who would I become? 2 hours later, I was sitting in Mr. Thompson's office again, but this time everything was different. This time, I wasn't just learning about my inheritance, I was accepting it, and all the impossible conditions that came with it. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Jessica?" Mr. Thompson asked for the 3rd time. "Once we start this process, there's no going back. Jessica Miller will cease to exist legally." I looked down at the papers spread across his desk, identity change forms, bank transfer documents, legal name change applications. It was surreal to see my entire existence reduced to paperwork. "I'm sure," I said, though my voice was shaking. "How long will it take?" "I have contacts who can expedite the process. Your mother, she made arrangements for this possibility. We can have your new identity ready in 48 hours. But Jessica, you need to understand, for those 48 hours, you'll be extremely vulnerable. These people will be looking for you everywhere. What do you suggest? Mr. Thompson opened a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Your mother left this for you. Instructions for the next 2 days, and some resources to help you disappear safely. Inside the envelope was another letter from my mother, along with a key and an address I didn't recognize. My darling Jessica, the letter began, if you're reading this, it means you've made the hardest decision of your life. I'm so proud of you for being brave enough to choose safety over comfort. The address on this paper is a safe house I've been paying for secretly for the past 5 years. There's everything you need there: food, clothes, cash, and most importantly, a secure place to wait while your new identity is being processed. The key will get you in. Trust no one except Mr. Thompson during this time. I love you always. Mom. I stared at the letter, amazed once again by how thoroughly my mother had planned for this day. Even in death, she was still protecting me. Your mother was a remarkable woman, Mr. Thompson said softly. She thought of everything. The safe house is registered under a false name, paid for in cash. No one can trace it back to either of you. What will my new name be? That's up to you. I suggest something completely different from Jessica Miller. New first name, new last name, new middle initial. The goal is to create someone who has no connection to your old life. I thought for a moment. Jessica had been my name for 30 years. It was hard to imagine being anyone else. But then I remembered my grandmother, my mother's mother, who had died when I was 10. Her name had been Elena Grace. Elena, I said. Elena Grace Harrison. Mr. Thompson wrote it down. Elena Grace Harrison. That's a beautiful name. Your new birthday will be 6 months different from your real one, and your new social security number will be completely clean. No credit history, no employment history, nothing. How is that possible? Let's just say your mother's $5 million bought more than just your safety. She bought you a completely new legal existence. He handed me more papers to sign, and with each signature, I felt Jessica Miller slipping away. It was terrifying and liberating at the same time. Where should I go after the 48 hours? I asked. Anywhere you want. I'd suggest somewhere far from Portland, somewhere warm where you can start fresh. Your mother set up bank accounts for Elena Harrison in 3 different states: Florida, Texas, and Arizona. Each account has enough money to live comfortably for years while you figure out what you want to do with your life. I signed the last paper and Mr. Thompson gathered everything up. This is it, Jessica. After I file these papers, there's no going back. Are you ready? I thought about my father's voice on the phone, telling me he was proud of me. I thought about my mother, who had sacrificed her own peace of mind for 18 years to keep me safe. I thought about the men who had broken into my apartment, who would never stop looking for Jessica Miller. I'm ready. The safe house was in a quiet suburb about an hour outside Portland. It was a small, nondescript house that looked exactly like every other house on the street. Nothing about it suggested it was anything other than an ordinary family home. I let myself in with my mother's key and was amazed by what I found. The house was fully furnished and stocked with everything I could need. There were clothes in my size hanging in the closet, food in the refrigerator, even books and magazines to keep me occupied during the wait. In the bedroom, I found a box with my new driver's license, social security card, and passport, all with Elena Harrison's name and my photo. My mother had somehow gotten my photo without me knowing and had these made in advance. The attention to detail was incredible. There was also a laptop with a secure internet connection and a prepaid cell phone. A note taped to the laptop explained that I could use these to research where I wanted to start my new life, but I should avoid all social media and any websites that might be monitored. For the first time in days, I felt relatively safe. I made myself some dinner and sat down to really think about what I wanted to do with Elena Harrison's life. I spent hours researching different cities, different climates, different possibilities. Florida appealed to me. Warm weather, lots of transplants from other places, easy to blend in. I could get a small apartment near the beach, maybe find work doing something completely different from marketing. But as I was researching, something kept nagging at me. Why had I given up so easily? These people had destroyed my family, forced my father into hiding, killed my mother's peace of mind, and now they were forcing me to give up my entire identity. Was running away really the only option? I thought about my conversation with my father. He had mentioned money that these people thought he had hidden. What if I could find that money? What if I could use it to buy my life back, or at least to hurt them the way they had hurt my family? It was a dangerous thought, and I knew it. My mother and father both had told me to run and never look back. But something in me rebelled against the idea of letting these criminals win. I used the secure laptop to research Viktor Kozlov and his son Anton. What I found made my blood run cold. These weren't just ordinary criminals. They were part of a sophisticated organization that had connections all over the country. Anton Kozlov had been suspected in dozens of murders, but he had never been convicted of anything. But I also learned something interesting. The FBI had been trying to build a case against Anton for years, but they could never get close enough to gather evidence. They had offered immunity and witness protection to several people who had worked for the organization, but most of those people ended up dead before they could testify. What if I could help them? What if I could be the key to bringing down Anton Kozlov and his entire organization? I knew it was probably a suicidal idea, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had lived my entire life as Jessica Miller without knowing the truth about my family. Was I really going to spend the rest of my life as Elena Harrison, running from shadows? On my second day in the safe house, I made a decision that I knew my mother would have hated. Instead of researching beach towns in Florida, I researched the FBI field office in Portland. Special Agent Maria Santos had been the lead investigator on the Kozlov case for 3 years. According to the articles I read, she had come closer than anyone to building a case against Anton, but key witnesses kept disappearing or changing their testimony. I wrote down her contact information and stared at it for a long time. If I called her, I would be putting myself in incredible danger. But if I didn't, Anton Kozlov would continue to terrorize people like my family, and I would spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Mr. Thompson. "Elena," he said, using my new name for the first time. "Your paperwork is ready. You can pick it up this evening, and by tomorrow morning, you'll be free to go wherever you want." "Mr. Thompson," I said, "I need to ask you something. Did my mother ever mention anything about evidence against the people who were after us? Documents, recordings, anything like that?" There was a long pause. "Why are you asking, Elena?" "Because I'm thinking about fighting back instead of running away." "Absolutely not. Your mother would roll over in her grave if she knew you were even considering such a thing. These people are not to be trifled with." "But what if I could help put them away for good? What if I could make sure they never hurt another family the way they hurt ours?" Another pause. "Elena, there's something I didn't tell you. Your mother, she did have some evidence. Documents your father had given her before he disappeared. She kept them as insurance, but she never used them because she was afraid of what would happen to you." My heart started racing. What kind of evidence? "Financial records, mostly. Proof of money laundering, names of other people in the organization, details about their operations. Your father had been keeping records as his own insurance policy, but when he decided to disappear, he gave everything to your mother. Where are they? Elena, you can't be seriously considering this. Where are they, Mr. Thompson? He sighed deeply. There's a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown. Your mother left you the key and the box number. It's in the envelope with your new identity documents. After I hung up, I sat in the safe house living room, staring at the key to the safety deposit box. I had a choice to make, and it was probably the most important choice of my life. I could take my new identity, my new money, and my new life, and disappear to Florida. I could spend the rest of my days as Elena Harrison, safe but always hiding, always wondering if today would be the day they found me. Or I could use the evidence my father had collected to help the FBI bring down Anton Kozlov and his organization. It would be dangerous, probably suicidal, but it might be the only way to truly be free. I thought about my mother, who had lived in fear for 18 years. I thought about my father, still hiding somewhere, probably lonely and afraid. I thought about all the other families who might be going through what we had gone through. And I thought about who I really was. Was I Jessica Miller, the woman who ran from problems? Or was I Elena Harrison, the woman who faced them head-on? That evening, instead of going to Mr. Thompson's office to pick up my new identity, I did something that would have terrified my mother. I called the FBI. Agent Santos? This is Jessica Miller. I think I have information that could help you build your case against Anton Kozlov. The meeting was set for the next morning at a coffee shop downtown. Agent Santos was a small, intense woman in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. Miss Miller, she said as I sat down across from her, you need to understand the risks you're taking. Anton Kozlov doesn't just kill people who cross him, he makes them suffer first. If you help us, there's a very good chance you'll end up dead. I understand that. But if I don't help you, he'll eventually find me anyway. At least this way, maybe I can do some good before that happens. I told her everything, about my father's real identity, about the evidence he had collected, about my mother's death and the inheritance with its impossible condition. Agent Santos listened without interrupting, taking notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. The evidence you're describing could be exactly what we need, she said when I finished. But Jessica, you have to understand, once we move on this, there's no going back. We'll have to move fast, and we'll need you to testify. Your life will never be normal again. It was never going to be normal again anyway, I said. At least this way, it might mean something. We retrieved the evidence from the safety deposit box that afternoon. The documents were even more damaging than Agent Santos had hoped. My father had been meticulous in his record keeping, documenting not just financial crimes but also instances of violence, extortion, and murder. This is enough to bring down the entire organization, Agent Santos said as she reviewed the papers. But we'll need to move fast. Once Anton realizes what we have, he'll try to destroy evidence and eliminate witnesses. The next few weeks passed in a blur of FBI safe houses, depositions, and preparation for trial. I learned that my father was alive and well, living under an assumed name in Montana. The FBI contacted him, and he agreed to come out of hiding to testify. When I saw him again for the first time in 18 years, he looked older and sadder, but he was still my father. We both cried as we hugged each other. I'm so proud of you, he said. And I'm so sorry for everything our family has been through because of my choices. It's not your fault, Dad. You were trying to protect us. The trial was a media sensation. For months, Anton Kozlov, and 12 members of his organization were on the front page of every newspaper in the country. I testified for 3 days, telling the jury about my family's 18 years of fear and hiding. During the trial, something unexpected happened. Public attention on my story led to other families coming forward, families who had been terrorized by organized crime but had been too afraid to speak up. My testimony gave them courage to tell their own stories. In the end, Anton Kozlov was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His organization was dismantled, and dozens of other criminals were prosecuted based on the evidence my father had collected. But the victory came at a cost. Even though Anton was in prison, there were still people loyal to him who wanted revenge. The FBI offered me permanent witness protection, but I had another idea. I called Mr. Thompson and told him I wanted to reject the inheritance after all. "Jessica, you can't be serious. After everything you've been through, you're going to walk away from $5 million. "I'm not walking away from it," I said. "I'm using it for something better." Instead of taking the money for myself, I used it to establish the Miller Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping families threatened by organized crime. We provided legal assistance, relocation services, and protection for people who wanted to testify against criminals but were afraid for their safety. I kept the name Elena Harrison, but not as a way to hide. I used it as a symbol of the new life I had chosen, a life where I wasn't running from my problems, but facing them directly. My father came out of hiding and joined me in running the foundation. We moved to Denver, where we worked together to help other families who were going through what we had experienced. "You know," he said to me one day as we were reviewing applications for assistance, "your mother would be so proud of what you've done with that money." "Do you really think so? She wanted me to take it and disappear. She wanted you to be safe and happy. And look at you now, you're both safe and happy, and you're helping other people be safe and happy too. That's more than she ever could have hoped for." The foundation grew quickly. Within 2 years, we had helped over 200 families escape dangerous situations or find the courage to testify against criminals. We had a staff of lawyers, investigators, and counselors, all dedicated to fighting organized crime. 3 years after I had first walked into Mr. Thompson's office, I met David Chen at a conference on organized crime. He was a federal prosecutor who specialized in cases like mine, and we instantly connected over our shared passion for justice. "You're the Jessica Miller," he said when we were introduced. "I followed your case closely. What you did was incredibly brave." "What I did was incredibly stupid," I laughed. "But it worked out." We started dating, and eventually got married. Our wedding was small but meaningful. My father walked me down the aisle, and many of the families we had helped through the foundation were there to celebrate with us. David and I had 2 children, Sarah Elena, named after my mother, and David James, named after his father. We raised them to understand the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. When Sarah was old enough to understand, I told her the whole story, about her grandfather's past, about the choice I had been given, and about why I had chosen to fight instead of run. "Mom," she said when I finished, "weren't you scared?" "Terrified," I admitted. "But sometimes being scared is less important than doing what you know is right." "Would you do it again? If you had to choose?" I thought about that question for a long time. Would I choose the same path again, knowing everything I know now? Knowing the danger, the stress, the years of looking over my shoulder? "Yes," I said finally. "Because look at what came from that choice. Our foundation has helped hundreds of families. Your grandfather and I have our relationship back. I met your father because of the work I was doing. And most importantly, I learned that I'm braver than I thought I was." 10 years after I first rejected my mother's inheritance, the Miller Foundation had become one of the most successful anti-organized crime nonprofits in the country. We had helped dismantle 3 major criminal organizations, assisted over 1,000 families, and worked with law enforcement agencies across the nation. But the real measure of our success wasn't in numbers. It was in the letters we received from families who were finally free from fear, from children who could go to school without bodyguards, from parents who could sleep peacefully at night. One letter in particular stood out to me. It was from a woman named Maria whose husband had been killed for refusing to launder money for a criminal organization. She had been afraid to testify until she heard about our foundation. "Dear Mrs. Harrison," she wrote, "because of your foundation, I found the courage to testify against the men who killed my husband. They were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. My children and I are finally safe. But more than that, we are proud. We stood up for what was right, just like you did. Thank you for showing us that it's possible to fight back and win." Letters like that reminded me why I had made the choice I did. My mother had wanted to give me $5 million to buy my safety. Instead, I had used that money to buy safety for thousands of other people. Sometimes people ask me if I regret giving up the money. They can't understand why anyone would walk away from $5 million. But I always tell them the same thing: I didn't give up $5 million. I invested it in something much more valuable. I invested it in justice. I invested it in courage. I invested it in the idea that ordinary people can fight back against evil and win. And the return on that investment has been more than I ever could have imagined. Today, as I write this story, I'm 45 years old. My children are teenagers, my marriage is strong, and my relationship with my father is closer than it ever was when I was growing up. The Miller Foundation continues to grow and help more families every year. Anton Kozlov died in prison 5 years ago, and most of his organization has been disbanded. The few remaining members are either in prison or in hiding. I still take security precautions, but I no longer live in fear. Most importantly, I wake up every morning knowing that I chose the right path. Not the easy path, not the safe path, but the right path. My mother left me $5 million with a condition I couldn't accept. But in rejecting that condition, I found something much more valuable than money. I found my purpose, my courage, and my true self. And that, I believe, is worth more than all the money in the world. Sometimes the best inheritance isn't what someone leaves you, it's what you choose to do with what they've given you. My mother gave me a choice, and I chose to fight. That choice changed everything, not just for me, but for hundreds of other families who found their own courage because of it. I threw back $5 million because I couldn't accept the condition. But what I built with that money instead has been the greatest gift of my life. That's my story. That's why I could never do what my mother asked. And that's why I've never regretted that decision for a single day.